This is Hong Kong.
Once known as the Pearl of the Orient, the third biggest financial center in the world, and where the East meets the West as a former colony of the United Kingdom now governed by China. The 1st of July 2026 marks 29 years since the small fishing village in the south was returned to China from British rule, and already the cityscape looks unrecognizable. So how did Hong Kong go from this to this?
Three decades since returning from British boarding school, I would argue that Hong Kong, much like many soon-to-be 30-year-olds, is having a bit of a severe identity crisis right now. But what exactly does that mean, and how exactly has that changed Hong Kong? Watch this full video to find out more.
Every now and then, I see posts on Reddit or online asking about Hong Kong. It will either be because people saw something in the news, or sometimes it's tourists asking for recommendations, or trying to recreate certain pictures or scenes that they've seen before. That's when I realized what people think they know about Hong Kong is very much shaped by the nostalgia and impression that was once created in popular culture, through movies such as In the Mood for Love, Rush Hour 2, or even Transformers and Doctor Strange. Let's just say they loosely adapted Hong Kong in those latter two. But it has been long since Hong Kong was the cultural powerhouse of Asia it once was. Gone are the days when Bruce Lee, world-class action movies, and classic Cantopop songs defined Hong Kong's narrative to the rest of the world as this dazzling kaleidoscope of lights and glamour. The sheer industrial scale of their entertainment industry in nearby regions, such as Japan, Korea, or China, has very much crowded out the rest of the world's appetite for Asian content. Heck, more people in Hong Kong might be listening to K-pop or watching Chinese dramas over locally produced content. Its economic position has also been drastically chipped away by neighboring Shenzhen, Shanghai, Taiwan, and Singapore. By many estimates and sources, Singapore and Shanghai are now the preferred bases for large multinational corporations in Asia, while Shenzhen and Taiwan have been quick to establish themselves as the main industrial hubs in the region for high-tech industries. This is not to say that Hong Kong has nothing to offer. If you haven't been here before, I would highly recommend you come visit. In my opinion, it's just some of the best food in the world at relatively affordable prices. Infrastructure levels and literacy rates are still one of the highest in the entire world, which means it's very easy to get around whether you're a foreigner or a local.
Depending on who you talk to, people might also point out that professional services in general are perceived to be doing pretty well, especially in relation to IPOs, where Hong Kong is still one of the top markets. That being said, how much money Hong Kong can raise for foreign companies is probably not particularly pertinent to the life of everyday citizens.
According to recent studies, such as this one done in 2022 by Stanford researchers, Hong Kong is one of the most unequal places in the entire world. By some measurements, Hong Kong is also one of the least affordable places to live in. Official government statistics estimate that over 300,000 people have chosen to leave Hong Kong and migrate to different countries in recent years. Those who might return will find their hometown unrecognizable in more ways than one.
It's probably fairly obvious by now that there's more to the lived reality of Hong Kong than the still somewhat presentable economic data on the surface. And there's really no better way to gain a proper understanding of this than to take you to the heart of the city. Or what's left of it, at least.
This is the Hong Kong the world remembers. This is what it looks like now. Once known as a city that never sleeps, Hong Kong boasted one of the most unique skylines and cityscapes. Neon lights lit up the night sky above bustling streets filled with people from all around the world. Russell Street is situated in the area of Causeway Bay on Hong Kong Island. It was often compared to Fifth Avenue in New York, because for many years in the past it was actually the single most expensive street in the entire world. It was the most sought after strip of real estate at the peak of Hong Kong's relevance. For big global brands, it was an important statement to be able to afford to rent out a shop on Russell Street. But nowadays, it looks a little bit more like this. The flagship mall Hong Kong's Times Square is eerily empty on a Saturday afternoon. If it's not entirely clear from the footage, the composition of the street is roughly 30% empty, 20% brand retailers, 20% fast food shops, and 30% pharmacies that sell cheap products to Chinese tourists. If we take just a few steps over to see the whole block, things are even more concerning. The fact that the Fifth Avenue of Hong Kong looks like that, I would argue, is a pretty damning indictment of the state of the economy in and of itself. On the other side of the harbour, Mong is one of the busiest and densest districts in the world.
Here in the beating heart of Hong Kong, you can tell things might not be as lively as you expect. Where I am right now is right off Nathan Road, which is the main axis that penetrates the entire Kowloon side of Hong Kong. Now, I am filming in the afternoon, but as you can tell, there's absolutely nothing here. No shops, no people. It's like a post-apocalyptic wasteland. So, how did this all happen?
Hong Kong used to position itself as this third culture kid, born Chinese but raised under British influences, and it served an important feature for the world back then, acting as a bridge between the Western world and the world's largest untapped market in the East. That said, as China increasingly opened up to embrace this economic miracle, Hong Kong chose to align itself entirely with the mainland. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, right? But if your entire competitive advantage and cultural identity was predicated upon the ability to balance these two things, foregoing one for the other means you no longer have a unique footing to stand on in this world. Everything that was once unique about Hong Kong has been entirely replaced and crowded out by mainland Chinese influences. Think about it this way. Why would individuals and investors choose Hong Kong over other alternatives when it's become just another identical bit of China? Bearing in mind it is still the most costly and an unequal place on the whole bloody planet. While you might think this is also not necessarily a problem. There's nothing inherently wrong with the city of Hong Kong's size performing a smaller and can perhaps argue more proportionate function in the global economy. Small towns exist, for very good reason, and are often very charismatic and some of the best places to live in. But as most modern economies now realize, much to the dismay of
Free market economists.
prices are very fast to react when going up, but much less elastic when coming down. There's also the massive population and overall structure of the economy that's been built up and now needs to be sustained to some degree. In other words, you can compare Hong Kong to a balloon. It could have been all flaccid and all that, and stayed that way. But this balloon was rapidly inflated to be much larger than its original size over the past couple of decades. So, if it runs into a sharp nail right now, there will be a very large bang.
It would be incredibly naive and ignorant of the global climate for me to claim that Hong Kong is in the dumps right now. Like I previously mentioned, a lot of the economic data is still somewhat respectable, and on a relative scale, it's definitely not a shithole. That being said, with all the evidence that I have presented to you today, it's also quite obvious at the same time that businesses, investors, and individuals are not willing to bet on Hong Kong's future either. And that's precisely why I think there's actually a much bigger lesson to be had here and to focus on. Hong Kong, like many small businesses and economies, are tempted to give in to the tides and trends of globalization, AI, or even gentrification. But once you empty out your streets, your people, and your identity in hopes that some sort of a greater power would take over and drive you to prosperity, someday you might find that you've lost yourself along the way. I think Hong Kong's problem now is that there isn't a clear value proposition towards the rest of the world and towards Hong Kong's future. Hong Kong doesn't have a position or identity on the global stage or even within China. So if you choose to do that, someday you may find yourself asking the question, what happened?